heroes, no villains. Just some good old-fashioned classic story revenge.
Down goes the champion!
He did it again!
Boy, that was then, and this is now.
The rematch you have all been waiting for.
One of the most epic fights in the history of the UFC.
You don't want to miss this one. Trust.
Right, let's get stuck into it. The rematch, the hotly anticipated rematch for the middleweight championship between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya.
And just in case anybody doesn't know, this isn't the rematch in the typical sense. This is the fourth time that they're going to share a combat arena. First two were in kickboxing. Look at that. There's the end of round one last time. The first one in the UFC. So this is round three. Is he getting a little bit of control time, taking him down? Pereira was pushing the pace a lot of the time, but in terms of actual output and strikes, Adesanya was far busier, far more accurate, landing a lot of shots. But the threat from Pereira is always there, and it was there right into the end in the fifth round when his corner team implored him, come on, listen, this is the final round, you got to go for it. And here's the finish. Starts landing, starts connecting. Izzy was still on the feet, he took it well, but the body language wasn't fantastic. Referee Mark Goddard steps in, and we have and new. But it was very competitive. Izzy was winning the fight. Izzy's still the favourite coming into this one. That shows how comfortable he was in that fight. So there's a lot of storylines. There's a lot of personal animosity. Izzy's putting pressure on himself as well, saying this is the last chance. I'm going to give it all I've got. And it really is. If he loses, this will be 4 times in a row that he's lost to Pereira. You don't really get a fifth. You shouldn't be getting a fourth. But of course, it's across 2 sports.
As Mike's just explained, these guys have done it 3 times before, and Pereira's had his arm raised 3 times before. So I am a little bit surprised. Do I believe Israel Adesanya is a better all-round mixed martial artist than Alex Pereira? Yes, I do. But Israel Adesanya, actually, the way his mixed martial arts game is put together, it's to bring his opponents into a kickboxing match where he 99 times out of 100 has the advantage. Unfortunately, against Alex Pereira, he does not have the advantage because Alex Pereira, as he's proven in the past, is a better kickboxer over time. I think what the past as well is doing with Izzy, you can see how focused they both are there. They're so well up for this. Izzy knows he's fighting like there is no tomorrow. He's got that champion's mentality. Pereira's staring him down as if to say, listen, guy, I've beat you 3 times before and I will do it again. But what Izzy brings to the octagon is the pressure of losing against this guy every single time. And that burns up nervous energy. That's why he unraveled in the last round. And that's why I think Pereira really should be the favourite in this one. Statistically, very similar, of course, as you see there. Izzy's got the advantage with more MMA fights, but Pereira's got more advantage from the kickboxing area as well. So it's a 50-50. It really is a toss-up.
So, Adesanya, is that a weakness? I don't know, but he's the first one to the scale. Let's have a look. Sorry, Adam.
No. This is what we like to see. Straight on the scale this morning, former champion Israel Adesanya.
184.5, the official weight for Israel Adesanya.
It's a good sign. Nice.
No messing.
Could have left his dog collar on.
Oh my God. How do we feel about the dog collar, boys? On a scale of 1 to 10 on the cringe meter, where we at?
Israel Adesanya's success in the UFC, and let's be honest, his success is what has led to Alex Pereira being able to be fast-tracked so quickly, because he pretty much cleared out the top of the division. He was lapping guys twice, and they needed a viable opponent, a strong narrative, and that's why Pereira was fast-tracked through inside 12 months for a shot against Izzy, because they had the old rivalry to sell. But this was like Izzy back in his vintage days. His whole game is set up, his mixed martial arts prowess is set up to control the geography of the fight. Where does the fight take place? Here. With hands, with feet, with kicks, with punches, with elbows, because that's Adesanya's strength. He's designed his mixed martial arts game to be incredibly strong grappling takedown defense, to be capable on the ground of popping back to your feet as quickly as possible, to get that fight into a kickboxing match. That's how it's designed. Unfortunately, he's come up against a guy that you could argue is a better kickboxer than him. So now he's got to evolve that game, that grappling prowess, to now become offensive grappler as well, to become more offensive on the ground. I'd be happy as an Adesanya fan. I'd be happy if he got on this guy, held him down, went for submission attempts, fought on the ground, shot for takedowns all night. The longer he stands with Pereira, the more he gives Pereira opportunities to do exactly what he's done in the past.
Welterweight contender Gilbert Durinho Burns.
Let's get back to Miami. Here's one half of the co-main event. Gilbert Durinho Burns, coming off the back of a great win against Neil Magny last time out, gave us a Fight of the Year contender, of course, against Khamzat Chimaev. Got a victory against Wonderboy, and previous to that, obviously fought for the title against Kamaru Usman.
This man's just one of the best human beings on planet Earth. Always so cool, calm, and collected. Never gets riled up or loses his temper.
170
but that is so juxtaposed.
For Gilbert Durinho Burns.
He's flashing the 305 himself now.
Yeah, compared to what he does inside the octagon, the man's a monster. But he's just like the coolest individual, because he doesn't have to have any bravado. He doesn't have to, there's no false. He doesn't have to puff his chest out. You know what I mean? Yeah. He knows what he's capable of, and he's a cool, quiet, silent assassin. Which now, of course, he has said that Colby gets the next shot, and he said Colby's the number one contender. But he did also say, we'll see how this all plays out. Basically, what I'm saying is, if it's more than likely Masvidal, to your point, if Masvidal can go out there, because I think, the reception that Masvidal's getting in Miami, of course, born and raised there, spent his entire life and always rep the city very proudly. So they're so behind him, and Dana can feel the noise and feel the energy and feel the pay-per-view potential. So if he can go out there and destroy Gilbert Burns with something really flashy and sensational and get a performance of the night and kind of steal the headlines, you never know. It might be Masvidal. Gilbert Burns needs to do the same thing. Both of them are in a position where, listen, if we're going to get this title fight, it needs to be amazing. It needs to be all-out action. Gilbert, boom, 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 drops him, and then pulls out a ridiculous submission that has everyone talking about it and people just thinking, wow, we've got to see him versus the champ. But yeah, you're right. He does that quietness about him potentially does hold him back.
He's a phenomenal mixed martial artist, Nick, as we're seeing here. And out of all the top contenders in the welterweight division, there's some top guys. I know that your boy Shavkat Rakhmonov is one of those that you'll always champion, but this guy is just as rounded.
Absolutely. He came into the UFC as one of the most established black belt jiu-jitsu players we've ever seen, and he's added hands, and he's added heavy hands as well. And that's credit to him and the work he's done. But, this is a flashback to 2019, the year of Masvidal, where he was just absolutely phenomenal. Literally couldn't miss with anything and was fight of the year that year. That feels like a long time ago. He's had a couple of title opportunities since. He's lost them both. He's lost to Colby. He's slipped right down the rankings, but he's still Jorge Masvidal. He's still one of the UFC's biggest pay-per-view stars, as we've seen the build-up all this week in Miami. Let's face it, the main event has got everybody in the world intrigued, but if your boots on the ground going to fight on Saturday night, everyone's going for the same reason, and that's to flash up the 305 because Jorge Masvidal is getting inside their octagon for the first time in his entire UFC career in Miami. It's a special moment. But he's also got the pressure of that as well. He knows all he's got to do is get his arm raised in style against Gilbert Burns, and he'll need to. I don't think he can win this on points. He needs to catch Gilbert coming in, and if Dan Hooker can knock out Gilbert Burns, then he will argue absolutely Jorge Masvidal can knock out Gilbert Burns. But he needs a knockout. But if he gets the knockout, he gets a world title fight. I'm convinced of it.
Question.
Here he is,
Here comes Jorge.
And number 11 ranked UFC welterweight contender Jorge Gamebred Masvidal.
We wait with bated breath.
Yeah, he's fine, though.
171 pounds, the official weight for
Gamebred
Jorge Masvidal.
Yeah, I never doubted that he wouldn't make weight.
I just thought he looked a little bit fleshy, Mike, last year, but he looks in great shape there.
Listen, at the end of the day, it's what have you done for me lately, isn't it, this game? And if he comes out the gate on Saturday night in front of his home fans of Miami, Dana's going to be sat there. He's going to be feeling that atmosphere. If Jorge comes out and does something spectacular on a top contender like Gilbert Burns, gets on the microphone, gives you an unbelievable promo, especially with this now amalgamation of the UFC and WWE. Come on, boys, you know what I mean? We've got to give it the big one, haven't we? You know what I mean? We've got to sell those storylines. And 3 pieces of a soda from backstage in London, it works, doesn't it?
Ooh.
Of course it does. It's just like Khabib and Conor. Granted, Conor and Khabib are both megastars in their own right, but when you combine that with the footage of the dolly and all the rest of it, that doesn't half sell a fight, and the footage of Masvidal speaking to Caroline Pearson, walking over and bang, 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 cracking Leon 3 times. Listen, that's great. It doesn't get much better than that in terms of promotion material. They need to settle this. However, he's got to get the job done. Not going to be easy.
Yeah. Been up to date with all the social media activity, the fighters that have weighed in. First guy that weighed in this morning, of course, was Israel Adesanya. And the last style bender has just tweeted there saying, fine then, I'll just use an IV to rehydrate. What's the legal loophole limit again? Listen, this is a narrative that is continuing on from yesterday, because in the press conference, everybody's seen the clip now where Israel Adesanya was encouraging USADA to follow people round, people being his opponent, in the aftermath of the weigh-in, insinuating what he's referring to, the use of IVs to rehydrate. We know the situation. We've obviously had a situation with all this off the back of what happened in Australia, where we had a fighter accused of rehydrating through intravenous drips, which, as we all know, are banned up to a particular point. Interesting. Has he tweeted again? That's another one. That's a fresh one that's just come up. USADA.
That was yesterday.
Oh, that was yesterday. Apologies. That was yesterday's the one that put up there. USADA monitored off the back of it. What do you make of it all, Mike?
Yeah. Well, it's the pressure, isn't it? It's the pressure getting to him here, and certainly, I mean, I am not a psychologist, so you can't look at that tweet and say, well, here's what he's thinking. Here's his reasoning behind it. But my guess at the reasoning behind that tweet is because the size of Pereira is looming large in his mind, pardon the pun, because otherwise, why is he going on about the weight cut? Why is he going on saying this guy clearly is going to use IVs because he's so huge for the division, and that's why he's able to go 5 rounds. Now, somebody, not me, but somebody might say that that's a sign of weakness. That's a sign of the pressure starting to get to him because he's going public with those thoughts, which are negative thoughts. Now, of course, Adesanya's passed his test many times. He's been in a my word, it's early still, far higher position than me for a much longer time. So far be it for me to, to discredit the champ. You know what I mean? But that does look like pressure, nerves, and he's putting it out publicly because he can't help himself, because it's driving him crazy. And again, as I said before about the size thing, normally Adesanya walks in and he towers over people. Yeah, he's not the biggest in terms of thickness and musculature and frame, but against Pereira, he's the smaller guy, and he's not used to that. And again, potentially, is looming large.
And you know what? What you're doing there is you are feeding the fire. So if Pereira's team see those comments, see that, he's obviously ruffled about the IV thing, Pereira will get one of his Brazilian teammates to walk around that hotel holding a box saying, IV drip for Pereira, IV drip for Mr. Pereira, just to wind Izzy up even more, just get in his head. We've seen Alex Pereira this week turn up in a Pikachu denim jacket, and someone said, why are you wearing a Pokemon jacket? He said, because he loves Pokemon. I'm getting in his head. I want to upset him. So this kind of stuff will just play into the hands of the champion who'll be like, right, let's wind him up even more. Find me what number's his hotel room. I'll ring up and say, Mr. Adesanya, your IV's ready now as well. They will be all over this like a rash. It's a sign of weakness from Izzy. I agree with Mike.
Rosas Jr.
Okay, here's the young blood. I will pick that conversation back up in a minute. Thank you very much for all your messages that are coming into the show. But here he is, young lad, made his debut obviously in December, and he was absolutely sensational. This is a step up. There's no gimme here against Christian Rodriguez.
18
Crazy
years old.
to think he's 18.
Official weight
18, and I tell you what,
for Raul Rosas Jr.
Bang on, 135, championship weight. You see him there. Listen, he's got a long way to go, a very, very long way to go. However, he has shown that he has all the potential to be, a contender one day. But so far, so good on the contender. Smashed it. UFC debut went out. I think it was first round submission. So, sky is the limit. However, he's yet to step up. But I will say this guy that he's fighting is a step up.
If Masvidal wins and McGregor beats Chandler, I know where you're going here, Keno. I like this type of language, Sunshine. If he beats Chandler, would you prefer him to fight Leon or defend the BMF against McGregor? Oof, what a good question. I love debates like this, Keno. You've done my job for me for the next 10 minutes. I'll put my feet up and let the boys have a bit of a scrap. Nick, I'll let you go first on this. What do you think?
I think it's clear. If he wins, he fights Leon. If he loses, he potentially fights McGregor anyway, because that BMF belt ain't going anywhere. And I think Conor needs wins. Let's be honest. Conor needs wins. Michael Chandler's no walk in the park. I think Masvidal offers something. Certainly Masvidal on a downward turn offers something with that BMF belt. It sells. It makes an absolute fortune. I think that's why if Masvidal loses Saturday night, he won't retire, because the potential to fight Conor down the line, regardless the pay-per-view numbers that would mean that he would stick around. But yeah, I think he beats Burns. If he beats Burns, and it's a big if, I think he fights Leon Edwards next, guaranteed. And then if he loses against Burns, he hangs around just in case Conor gets it done against Chandler, because that BMF belt is worth tens of millions of dollars, baby.
No. Nick, I agree with you in every way. However, if McGregor loses the BMF belt with Masvidal's there, if he beats Chandler, McGregor's fighting for a belt, either at 155 or 170. If he loses and Masvidal loses, then they're going to fight each other potentially for the BMF belt. He was asked about that yesterday, and he said, I'm willing to put that up. Listen, if he wins against Burns, he wants the title fight. Listen, money's fantastic, and we all want to earn as much of it as possible. But when it's all said and done, you want to be able to sit back and say, you know what, I became the undisputed welterweight champion of the world. That's what he wants, and he looks at Leon Edwards as a stylistic, favorable matchup to him. Not saying he beats him, but they're both strikers first. You know what I'm saying?
Where WWE and UFC are coming together to form one big entity. Mike, what did you make of this news when it dropped this week? Because it just feels absolutely ginormous.
I think on a grand scale, day to day, I don't think it changes too much, to be honest, other than being a ridiculously sound investment for Ari Emanuel and the parent company Endeavor.
Yeah. I said, we were talking about a similar thing, weren't we?
Yeah, it gives them strong negotiating power when they do things like TV deals all over the world, because they're now discussing it as a joint venture, as a coming together. When you're talking to blue chip sponsors, you're talking on behalf of the two biggest pay-per-view drivers in sports, wrestling and the UFC. So in terms of financial clout, it's just absolutely ridiculous. I don't think there'll be big crossover, like Mike says. It's not like we're going to see, a lot of WWE guys suddenly come into the UFC. We've seen that before. It worked once. It certainly did not work the second time. I think we might see a couple more UFC fighters go the other way. I could absolutely see Conor going the other way and having some fun over there and making some money, of course. Maybe even Masvidal, if they do a big SummerSlam in Miami. Here's the main man himself now with a belt on every shoulder. Never misses a trick, does he, Mr. McGregor? But I could see that. I could see that playing out, obviously, because, as we know, WWE follows a script anyway. So I could see that playing out for sure. But yeah, I think it's more about a boardroom thing. It's more about being able to negotiate these incredibly big financial deals, but also, intriguingly, as a boxing fan, you know what? With Dana White and Vince McMahon around the same boardroom table and the business clout of Ari Emanuel behind them, I tell you what, if they wanted to take on boxing, which is, let's be honest, being run by YouTubers these days, they could change that sport as well. So as a boxing fan, I'm super intrigued to see if they dip the toe in that water, because if they do, they could change an entire sport.
Last time out against Kelvin Cater, you can't blame him for Cater blowing his knee out, and he was doing very well before that. Dan Hooker, sensational stoppage. I mean, he was on fire. So the performances are getting better and better. He's had big wins before, Gilbert Melendez a few years ago as well. But this is the one. This is the one for Arnold Allen. Now, I got to be careful that I don't get accused of biased commentary again, because the guy's from England. I love Maxi Baby. I love Arnold Allen. May the best man win. It's a shame for Arnold in some ways, because Holloway's been able to beat everybody not called Alexander Volkanovski. You know what I mean? So it's almost like such a shame you got to go through Max Holloway to get a shot at the belt. But if he can join that exclusive club, of course, there's Conor McGregor on there a very long time ago when Max first came to the UFC. But if he can join Volkanovski and Conor McGregor in beating Max Holloway, come on. After Yair Rodriguez and Volkanovski are done with their fight, that has to, without question, be the fight.
UFC 290, July, International Fight Week. We saw that Yair Rodriguez picked up the interim belt whilst Volkanovski was having a go at the lightweight belt, but the champion of 145 is coming back down to defend his territory against Yair Rodriguez. What a fantastic, fantastic fight. Unconfirmed still by the UFC, but we know that this is the direction that we're going. What a great fight that will be. 5 rounds for the featherweight championship of the world.
Yeah, sensational, and Volkanovski came narrowly short to adding the lightweight belt as well against Islam Makhachev earlier in the year, and there's a real strong chance for him, to push for the immediate rematch. I think there was a lot of calls for it as well, but he is the best fighter on the planet. He remains, for me, the pound-for-pound best fighter on the planet, and he's taking care of business, and this is what real champions do. He's like, okay, yeah, well, that fighter's there down the line. Right now, I'm going to go back down and defend my actual world title belt because there's a guy that's a standout contender. And that's what Yair Rodriguez has done. He's put himself in a position where he can't be ignored. And Volk, let's be honest, Volk's doing the right thing, man. Volk's doing the right thing by going, right, okay, they've had to crown an interim champ in the meantime while I tried to do this. That didn't quite work out for me. But he did say as well ahead of the Makhachev fight, I'll win the lightweight belt and I'll go back and defend my featherweight belt before I do anything else. So he's a man of his word. And listen, if every fighter on the UFC roster had the mentality of these city kickboxing guys, then the world would be a much better place. Fighting the average fight every 4 months, fantastic, man. I love it. I'm all over it. It's a sensational fight. What a fight for International Fight Week. And the noises we're hearing, it's not the only world title fight we're going to get that weekend either. So hopefully we get the big boys. Hopefully John Jones, who's watching this, I know he's a big fan of the show. Come on, John. You and Stipe, let's get it on.
What a guy.
Right,
what a
fighter.
The technique on this guy.
Whom this fight card
Guram Kudrutaladze is not a megastar, though. I can hardly pronounce his name.
Here you go.
He's got the towel.
He's
got the towel. He had the towel.
Straight from the sauna.
He's been in the sauna, mate. No messing. Bosh.
Big
Just
smile,
been playing with everybody's minds.
Sucked down like a used tea bag.
185 pounds, the official weight for Alex Pereira. Yeah. And with that, your UFC 2
no issue whatsoever
is now official.
I tell you what, he had some big guns on him there, though.
He's going to be twice the size tomorrow night as well. That's the problem. The UFC be relieved here because I don't know whether you guys had heard anything, but I didn't know anything about a backup for the main event either. We've had a backup in London for the Leon Edwards fight. We had a backup for the John Jones, Cyril Gane fight, the title fight. This is a title fight, and as far as I know, there's no backup in Miami. Certainly no one's weighed in. So a huge sigh of relief there for the UFC that he's finally got on the scales. But with 30 minutes to go, Mike, I don't think that was a case of, I'll rock up when I think they've timed it perfectly. We'll weigh in midway through the second hour of the scales, use every minute we can and be as strong as we possibly can. And they look good to me.
Because I remember I fought pre-IV, when you could use an IV, and I fought after using an IV. The IVs were great. I used to set them up. You get it put into your arm, you lie down, you're absolutely exhausted. You take a nap, and then you wake up. Oh, baby, you're back in the room. You feel like $1 million again, as opposed to manually drinking electrolytes and feeding and eating. And you could just fall asleep and wake up feeling $1 million. Unless, of course, I had Dean Amasinga do my IV once in Australia. He'd just done a course in it. Dean Amasinga said, I can do your IV for you. Yeah, check this out. So it's good old-fashioned Dean Amasinga. Shout out, Dean. Love you, brother. He comes into my room. He says, I'll do your IV, Mike. Starts going into my vein. Then all of a sudden, blood is just spurting everywhere, right? And if you put your finger on it, it stops. But as soon as you let go, blood was flying off everywhere again. So he'd done something wrong. And I'm like, Dean, is this normal? And he's like, hold on. And he runs off. He runs off to get someone, like a doctor or something, to help him, right? But whilst he was gone, it kind of stopped bleeding a bit. But I said to Rebecca, I said, Beck, just wedge the door open so I can hear when he's coming from the lift. And I could hear them walking down, so I start going, and he's running, terrified. I'm like, oh my God, Dean. He's like, what's going on? I said, no, I'm fine, buddy. You're good. So yeah, the IVs were a bit of a nightmare when Dean Amasinga was doing them. Other than that, you do feel good. Shout out, Dean.
Amazing.
There you go. Hopefully that answers your question. Just moving the conversation on to a different fighter. We've seen him call out every single man under the sun in the last 24 hours, doing it in quite a humorous way, actually. I'm a big fan of the haircut that he put on Hasbulla.
He should be here.
Gilbert Burns.
He should have been here. He should have been the stand-in.
You're obviously referring to Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat, there you go. There's his recent social media activity where he's literally called out every single person. Doesn't matter what weight division, he's having a go at them all. We're hearing chat, Mike, that Paulo Costa might be next in line for Khamzat Chimaev. I personally think that's a great fight. If we can get that done at middleweight, great fight.
Yeah.
But what have you made? What have you made of his noise over the last 24 hours? Literally naming everybody of any real note across welterweight and middleweight.
Well, when's the last time he fought? It was a long time ago, right? Let me just look at Gilbert Burns.
Gilbert Burns.
Because it'll be on the...
Yeah.
The last time he fought was Gilbert Burns, which was, let me see.
Last July, I think
it was a year ago. It was April.
Oh, right.
It was April 2022. Okay. So it was clear. It was bang on a year ago. He's trying to stay relevant. And listen, he's a big star. He's a dangerous threat to multiple weight classes, let's be honest. But you've got to stay relevant. So that's what he's trying to do here by calling everybody out. If that fight materializes, him and Paulo Costa, I'm a huge fan of that matchup. You know, Costa's one of those guys as well. He's very active on social media. He talks a lot of, BS. He talks a good game, a lot of smack. You know, he stays relevant as well. And inside the octagon, he's a credible threat to a lot of people. So that's a sensational matchup. Yeah, sign me up, take my money. You know, if Khamzat's making the move to middleweight, I think he needs to go to a top contender before we start talking about title fights, because it's just not fair. You know what I mean? You got to earn those opportunities. Costa would be one of those opportunities. Yes, Adam.
They did try and make Whittaker, didn't they?
Hang on. I'm just picking you up on that because obviously he fought Kevin Holland, didn't he? Off the back of Gilbert Burns. That was in September, but it was the one that he missed weight by, what was it?
Sorry, you are correct. You are correct. My bad,
crazy amount of weight. So he's kind of got to prove that as well, hasn't he? He's got to show the professionalism of, listen, if we're booking you for a fight, you turn up, you hit weight, you don't mess us about. We don't have this big furore where you're changing fights the night before, because that's what happened with the Kevin Holland situation. He's got to show that professionalism in order to get himself in with the guys that he's talking about.
Yeah, but this is at 185. You know, that's what we're talking about here, which would be an extra 6 or 7 pounds from the amount that he missed weight. 170 to 185, that's a big jump. As you know, it's not boxing. It's not 2-3 pounds. That's 15 pounds or even 16 pounds with a pound allowance. If he struggles to make weight at 185, then, you know, he needs to go find another job because you're not taking it seriously. It's true, though. You know, if you made weight at 170 a few times, I mean, look at, you know, all right, to be fair, look at the late and great Anthony Rumble Johnson, fought at 170, right? Made weight at 170, missed weight at 185, ended up finishing his career at 205, and he was gigantic. You know what I mean? God bless him and God rest his soul. So, yeah, you know, we have seen people do that, but one would imagine that he makes 185 very comfortably.
Got some great news there, Michael, because our production team have just said, listen, Michael doesn't have to stay, neither do you two, for Christian Rodriguez's extra hour. All right, we'll keep you up to date with that via our social media pages. So make sure you visit the BT Sport Twitter pages and Instagram pages.
Don't put that on me. Don't put that.
Why not?
The UFC programming has ended. John Anik just hung up the phone and said, listen, I'll see you on the ceremonials. Yeah, what's his face? He needs to make weight, but that's on him. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Don't say, listen,
what's the matter with you?
You're off the hook. The UFC programming is ended.
You've just
ceased to exist. The weigh-in show is finished in a minute. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Right? Don't say, Michael, you're off the hook. I've been sitting there since 5 a.m. I was up at 4 a.m. I am committed to this job, to this role, to these people stepping on the scale, enduring the hardship of weight cuts and fights at the highest level. My God.
There's just no need.
Didn't like
that
one,
There's no need
Adam.
For those jibes. Hey, Lord Voldemort, there's no need for those jibes against Harry Potter here with his glasses on. Leave him alone.
And the jabs. Otherwise, I'll jab your head off when I see you next. Boom. Straight down the pipe. You like a bit of boxing.
That's all from us. Enjoy the fights.
He's that guy that people think can beat me. because he already has.
No heroes, no villains. Just some good old-fashioned classic story revenge.
Down goes the champion. He did it again.
But that was then, and this is now.